Captain Jake Morrison stood by the big window of his spaceship and watched the alien ship come closer. The alien ship was huge and made of some kind of crystal that shined bright under the starlight. His ship looked very small next to it. Emma Clark stood next to him, holding her computer tablet and checking it again and again. She looked worried and excited at the same time. The aliens were called Zephyrians, and they were the first aliens that humans had ever met. That was 6 months ago when their ships first appeared near Earth. These aliens were very tall and thin with silver skin that seemed to glow. They had 4 arms instead of 2 like humans, and their eyes were big and had many parts like the eyes of insects. But the most amazing thing about them was how smart they were. They could think faster than any human and solve math problems that would take human computers hours to figure out. When the Zephyrians first met humans, they were not impressed. They looked at human cities and technology and said humans were too simple and not smart enough to join the big group of alien species that worked together across the galaxy. This group was called the Galactic Council, and it included hundreds of different alien races from many different planets. The Zephyrians said humans would have to prove they were smart enough before they could join. Emma looked up from her tablet and spoke to Jake. Her voice was quiet, but he could hear she was nervous. She told him that aliens wanted to come on board their ship. Jake nodded and told her to let them come. Today was the day that would decide if humans were smart enough for the aliens or not. Dr. Lisa Warren was also on the ship, and she had been preparing for this day for many weeks. She was the smartest human when it came to games and strategy. She studied how people think and make decisions. The government had chosen her to represent all humans in this test. She knew this was not just about playing a game. This was about showing the aliens that human minds could do things that alien minds could not do. The door to the docking area made a hissing sound as it opened. 3 Zephyrians floated inside without making any sound. The leader was named Kethfa, and he was even taller than the others. His silver skin moved like water in the light, and his forearms moved in perfect smooth motions. When he looked at the humans, his big eyes seemed to see everything at once. Keth first spoke through a machine that changed his alien words into human words. His voice had strange musical sounds in it that made it sound like he was singing and talking at the same time. He told the humans that they had agreed to take the test. The test would be a game of chess, but not like any chess game humans had ever played before. This chess game would be played in zero gravity, where there was no up or down and pieces could float in the air. The chessboard would be 3-dimensional, which meant pieces could move in directions that were impossible on a normal flat chessboard. The alien champion was named Veltar, and Kethfa said he had never lost a game. Veltar was shorter than Kethfa, but his forearms moved even faster. His eyes were smaller, but they moved quickly as they looked at everything in the room. When he looked at Lisa, she felt like he was studying her the way a scientist studies a bug under a microscope. Jake Morrison had been a ship captain for 15 years, but he had never felt pressure like this before. The future of all humans depended on what happened in the next few hours. If Lisa won the game, then humans would be allowed to join the Galactic Council and learn from hundreds of alien species. They would get new technology and knowledge that could solve problems like hunger and disease on Earth. But if Lisa lost, then humans would be left alone and the aliens would never come back. Lisa Warren looked calm, but Jake could see her hands shake just a little bit. She had practiced this game thousands of times on computers, but she had never played against an alien mind that could think faster than any human. She had studied every chess game ever played by humans and learned from the greatest chess masters in history. But now she had to use everything she knew against an opponent whose brain worked in ways no human could understand. The Zephyrians had brought their own equipment for the game. The chess pieces were made of the same crystal material as their ship, and they glowed with soft light. The pieces could float in the air using magnetic fields, and they could be moved in any direction, including up and down. Kethfa explained that the rules were the same as regular chess, except that pieces could move through 3-dimensional space instead of just on a flat board. Emma Clark finished setting up the communication equipment so that people on Earth could watch the game. Millions of humans would be watching and waiting to see if their species was smart enough to join the galactic community. The pressure was enormous, but Lisa tried to stay calm and remember everything she had learned about strategy and human thinking patterns that might give her an advantage against the alien mind. Ben Murphy had not slept for 3 days straight while he worked to get the zero-gravity room ready for the chess game. He was the chief engineer on the ship, and it was his job to make sure everything worked perfectly. The room was shaped like a big ball, and normally they used it to test equipment in zero gravity. But now he had changed it into something that had never existed before. The chess pieces floated at different heights throughout the whole room, creating a board that went in every direction. Some pieces were near the ceiling and others were near the floor, but in zero gravity there really was no ceiling or floor. Everything just floated in space and players could move in any direction they wanted. Ben had worked with the ship computer to create magnetic fields that would hold the pieces in place until someone moved them. Lisa Warren pushed herself off from the door and floated toward the center of the ball-shaped room. She moved carefully and smoothly because she had practiced moving in zero gravity for many hours. But her opponent Velta moved like he had been born in zero gravity. Every movement he made was exact and perfect. His forearms let him reach in different directions at the same time while keeping his body perfectly balanced. Commander Ryan Parker was there to watch for the humans while Kethva watched for the aliens. They had also brought in a computer referee that both humans and aliens agreed was fair. The computer would make sure both players followed the rules and would announce when the game was over. The rules were not complicated, but the game would be much harder than normal chess. Players could still only move pieces the way they were supposed to move in regular chess. A horse piece still had to move in an L shape and a castle piece still had to move in straight lines. But now those straight lines could go up and down as well as forward and backward and side to side. This meant there were many more possible moves for every piece. The computer referee announced that the game would begin. Lisa had spent many hours in zero-gravity training rooms, but this felt different. She had to think about where her body was positioned as well as where the chess pieces were. Every time she wanted to move a piece, she had to float to the right position and make sure she could reach it, without bumping into other pieces or losing her balance. Veltar made the first move, and it was unlike anything Lisa had ever seen in chess. He moved several pawn pieces at the same time, using his forearms to create a pattern that used the up and down directions as well as the normal chessboard directions. The pattern looked like a three-dimensional wall that would be impossible to create on a flat chessboard. Lisa studied the position carefully before making her move. She had to turn her body to see all the pieces from different angles because, in zero gravity, she could look at the board from above or below or any side. This was something she had practiced, but it still felt strange. She moved one of her pawn pieces forward in a normal chess move, but positioned it so it could attack in 3 different directions instead of just one. The first hour of the game passed slowly as both players made careful moves. Veltar played like a computer, making perfect mathematical calculations for every move. His forearms let him consider many different piece movements at the same time. Lisa could see him thinking about multiple possible moves and calculating thousands of different game positions in his head. His alien brain could process information much faster than any human brain. But Lisa had something that Veltar did not have. She had intuition, which meant she could feel when a move was right or wrong, even if she could not explain why with mathematics. Human brains were not as fast as alien brains, but they worked in different ways. Humans could see patterns and make connections that pure logic could not find. As the game continued, Lisa noticed that Veltar was winning more pieces than she was. His logical approach was working very well, and he was using the 3-dimensional space to attack her pieces from angles that were hard to defend against. Any human watching the game would think that Lisa was losing badly and that the aliens were right about humans not being smart enough. But Lisa was not trying to win pieces. He was trying to create confusion and uncertainty in positions where pure logic would not be enough. Every move she made looked simple but was designed to create problems that could not be solved just by calculating. She was turning the chess game into something that required more than just mathematical thinking. Amy Foster was monitoring the communications between the alien ships, and she reported that more Zephyrian ships had arrived to watch the game. The aliens were confident that their champion would win easily and prove that human intelligence was inferior to alien intelligence. They were already planning to leave Earth's solar system after the game was over, but something strange was happening that the aliens did not expect. Lisa's moves were creating positions that made Veltar pause and think longer before making his moves. His perfect mathematical system was running into problems that could not be solved with pure logic. The chaos and unpredictability of human thinking was introducing variables that his computational mind had trouble processing. Lisa made a move that looked like a mistake to everyone watching. She moved her queen piece into a position where it could be captured easily. The queen was the most powerful piece in chess, and losing it would normally mean losing the game. But Lisa had a plan that went beyond normal chess thinking. She was not just playing chess against Veltar, she was playing against the way his mind worked and trying to create situations where alien logic would become a weakness instead of a strength. 3 hours had passed since the chess game began, and people from both species watched with growing interest. Viltar had captured several of Lisa's pieces using combinations that seemed impossible to defend against. His logical approach was systematic and overwhelming. Every move he made was mathematically perfect and designed to give him the maximum advantage possible. Amy Foster continued to monitor the transmissions between the alien ships that had gathered to watch the game. More Zephyrian vessels kept arriving as word spread throughout their fleet that they were about to witness a demonstration of human intellectual inferiority. The aliens were already discussing how they would report this victory to the Galactic Council as proof that humans were not ready to join the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. But something unexpected was beginning to happen that confused the alien observers. Lisa's position looked terrible according to all normal chess analysis, but she was creating problems that Veltar's computational mind struggled to understand. Her moves appeared illogical and wasteful, but they were introducing elements of chaos into the ordered system that the Zephyrian had constructed. Dr. Kevin Barnes was the ship's expert on alien biology, and he had been studying the game patterns on his computer. He made an announcement to the other crew members that changed how they understood what Lisa was doing. He said she was not playing to win material or capture pieces like normal chess players did. Instead, she was playing to create uncertainty and confusion in situations where pure mathematical calculation would not be enough to find the best move. Lisa pushed herself off one of the walls of the spherical room and rotated her body to view the floating chessboard from a completely different angle. In zero-gravity perspective became fluid and changeable, and she was using this to her advantage in ways that Veltar could not match. While the Zephyrian calculated optimal moves from a fixed mental framework, Lisa constantly shifted her viewpoint to see possibilities that existed only when the mind was freed from conventional thinking patterns. Her next move was brilliant in its apparent simplicity, but shocking to everyone who understood chess. She deliberately sacrificed her queen by moving it to a position where Veltar could capture it easily. The queen was worth 9 points in chess value, while most other pieces were worth only 1 to 5 points. Losing the queen should have meant losing the game, but Lisa's sacrifice created a position that looked hopeless, but contained hidden potential that only human intuition could recognize. Veltar's forearms paused for the first time since the game had begun. His large, multifaceted eyes reflected something that Zephyrians rarely experienced, which was uncertainty about the correct logical choice. His computational mind told him to capture the queen because that was the mathematically optimal move, but something about the resulting position felt wrong in ways he could not calculate or explain. The sacrifice had completely transformed the nature of the game, where before there had been clear lines of advantage and disadvantage with pieces positioned according to logical principles. Now there was ambiguity and confusion. Veltar's superior processing power was being undermined by the very randomness and unpredictability of human intuitive thinking. Keffer floated closer to observe the game position, and his silver skin seemed to dim slightly as he struggled to understand what the human player was trying to accomplish. The other Zephyrian observers began communicating with each other in their harmonic language, and their transmissions showed increasing confusion about why their champion was hesitating over what should have been a simple decision. Lisa used the pause to study Veltar's body language and facial expressions. Even though he was an alien, she could see signs of stress and uncertainty in the way his forearms moved less smoothly than before. His eyes were darting back and forth between different pieces as he tried to calculate all possible consequences of capturing the queen, but found that human unpredictability made accurate calculation impossible. Chris Holland had been studying the game from his navigation station, using the ship's tactical computers to analyze the emerging patterns. What he discovered amazed him, and he reported his findings to Captain Morrison. Lisa was not just playing chess according to the rules, she was playing with the three-dimensional space itself in ways that the Zephyrian was not accounting for. The human player was using small effects like momentum transfers when she pushed off walls, air current disruptions from her movements, and even magnetic field interactions with the floating pieces. These tiny physical effects were too small for Veltar's logical mind to consider important, but they were accumulating to create advantages that existed outside the pure mathematics of chess. Strategy. Veltar finally made his decision and captured Lisa's queen as his calculations demanded. To any observer, it appeared that he had gained a decisive advantage and the game would be over within a few more moves. But Lisa smiled for the first time since the game began because she had achieved exactly what she had been working toward for 3 hours. The capture of her queen had forced Velta to move several of his pieces into positions that looked strong, but were actually constraining his future options. His logical system had optimized for immediate material gain but had not accounted for the long-term positional problems that human intuition could recognize. Lisa's sacrifice had been a trap that used the alien's own logical thinking patterns against him. Engineer Sam Torres was watching from the engine room, and he recognized what Lisa had accomplished even though he was not a chess expert. He announced to his crew that she had built a trap, but not a normal chess trap. Instead, she had created a psychological trap that used the differences between human and alien thinking to turn Veltar's greatest strength into a weakness that would ultimately cost him the game. Chris Holland continued his analysis from the navigation station and made another important discovery about how Lisa was playing the game. She was not just using the physical effects of zero gravity to her advantage, but was also recognizing patterns in Veltar's thinking that the alien himself was not aware of. Human brains were designed to find patterns even in random information, and this ability was giving Lisa insights that pure computational thinking could not provide. The game had become more than a battle between two chess players. It was now a clash between two completely different approaches to solving problems and understanding the world. Velta represented the pinnacle of logical computational thinking that could process vast amounts of information and calculate optimal solutions to complex problems. Lisa embodied the human capacity for creative intuitive leaps that could transcend pure logic and find solutions that existed outside mathematical analysis. Dr. Helen Cooper was monitoring the biological readings of both players from her medical station. Lisa's heart rate had actually decreased as the game became more intense, which showed she was entering a state of focused concentration that humans called flow. Meanwhile, Veltar's electromagnetic field patterns showed increasing instability, which was the alien equivalent of stress and anxiety. The human was becoming more relaxed while the alien was becoming more agitated. As the fifth hour of the game began, the momentum started to shift in ways that surprised all the observers. Veltar's moves became less certain, and his forearms no longer moved with the mechanical precision they had shown earlier. The Zephyrian was experiencing something his species rarely encountered, which was doubt about the correctness of logical analysis. Lisa continued to make moves that violated basic chess principles according to traditional human understanding of the game. She moved pieces into positions that appeared vulnerable, ignored obvious threats that any chess computer would have defended against, and focused on creating complex patterns that served no immediate tactical purpose that anyone could identify. Engineer Sam Torres had been watching carefully, and he understood what Lisa was building even though he could not explain it in chess terms. She was constructing what he called a multi-dimensional trap that existed not just in the three-dimensional space of the floating chess pieces, but also in the temporal dimension of move sequences and in the psychological dimension of how different types of minds approached problem solving. The Zephyrians observing the game were becoming increasingly confused, and their harmonic communications showed growing concern about their champion's performance. They had expected Velta to demonstrate clear intellectual superiority over the primitive human mind, but instead they were seeing their greatest strategic thinker struggle against an opponent whose moves seemed to make no logical sense. Keth moved closer to the game area, and his large eyes studied the position of the floating pieces with growing bewilderment. His species had encountered many different forms of intelligence throughout the galaxy, but they had never met minds that could consistently find effective solutions through apparently random and illogical thinking processes. Lisa executed a series of moves that seemed to put her remaining pieces in even greater danger. She moved her king closer to Veltar's attacking pieces, moved her remaining powerful pieces away from defensive positions, and created what looked like a hopeless situation for any normal chess analysis. The human observers watching the game began to worry that she had made critical errors that would cost humanity its chance to join the galactic community. But Tony Blake was watching from his security station, and he had begun to see the deeper pattern that Lisa was creating. Her last 20 moves had been a masterpiece of misdirection, where each individual move appeared to be a desperate attempt to avoid defeat while actually constructing an elaborate trap that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Veltar's superior processing power, which had been such an advantage in computational tasks, was now becoming a disadvantage as he calculated endless variations of positions that no longer mattered. His logical mind was trapped in what humans called analysis paralysis, where too much information and too many options prevented effective decision-making. Meanwhile, Lisa's intuitive approach allowed her to see the overall strategic picture while Veltar became lost in detailed tactical calculations. The aliens for arms began to move more slowly as he struggled to process the complex position that Lisa had created. Every piece on the board seemed to have multiple possible moves, and every move led to positions that were difficult to evaluate. The mathematical certainty that had guided all of Veltar's previous decisions was being replaced by ambiguity and uncertainty that his computational mind was not designed to handle. Lisa floated calmly in the center of the spherical room and rotated slowly to view the game position from different angles. Her breathing was steady and her movements were relaxed. Despite the enormous pressure she was under, she had spent months preparing for this moment, and now she could feel that her strategy was working exactly as she had hoped. The critical moment was approaching, when all of her careful preparation would either succeed in defeating the alien champion, or fail and doom humanity to isolation from the galactic community. But Lisa felt confident because she understood something that the Zephyrians did not. Human intelligence was not inferior to alien intelligence. It was simply different, and sometimes those differences could be turned into decisive advantages. She prepared to make the move that would either prove human worthiness to join the galactic community or demonstrate that mankind was indeed too primitive for advanced alien civilizations. Everything depended on whether her understanding of the differences between human and alien thinking was correct, and whether she had successfully created the conditions necessary for human intuition to triumph over computational logic. The critical moment arrived when Lisa made a move that seemed to put her king in immediate and unavoidable danger. She pushed the floating piece toward a position where Veltar's attacking forces could reach it from multiple directions. To every observer, both human and alien, it looked like she had made a fatal error that would end the game within the next few moves. The humans watching from Earth felt their hearts sink as they saw what appeared to be the final mistake that would cost their species its place in the galactic community. Veltar studied the position with his forearms moving in precise calculations. As he analyzed every possible continuation, his computational mind identified 17 different ways to achieve checkmate within the next few moves. Every logical analysis confirmed that victory was now assured, and that the human had finally made the decisive error that his mathematical thinking had been waiting for. His large, multifaceted eyes showed the satisfaction of a problem solver who had found the correct solution. But as Veltar reached out with one of his forearms to make what should have been the winning move, something unprecedented happened. He hesitated and his arm stopped halfway to the chess piece. For the first time in his long career as a strategic thinker, he experienced something that was completely foreign to his species. His logical mind told him that victory was mathematically certain, but some deeper instinct warned him that something was wrong with the position. This hesitation was more than just unusual for a Zephyrian, it was almost impossible. Their entire civilization was built on the principle that mathematical analysis could solve any problem, and that logical thinking always led to correct decisions. Doubt and uncertainty were concepts that existed only in primitive species that had not yet learned to trust pure computational reasoning. But Veltar was experiencing exactly these forbidden emotions as he stared at the chess position. Lisa watched the alien's hesitation with growing excitement because this was exactly the moment she had been working toward for 6 hours. She had created a position where logic and intuition would diverge completely, where the mathematically correct move would lead to a hidden trap that could only be seen through human style, pattern recognition, and creative thinking. Dr. Helen Cooper continued monitoring the biometric readings and reported that Veltar's electromagnetic field patterns were showing extreme instability. The alien was experiencing something equivalent to a panic attack as his entire worldview was challenged by a situation where mathematical certainty was not enough. Meanwhile, Lisa's readings showed she was in a state of perfect calm and focus. As if she had been waiting her entire life for this exact moment, Kethfer floated closer to observe his champion's unusual behavior. The other Zephyrian observers had stopped their harmonic communications and were watching in silent confusion as their greatest strategic mind struggled with what should have been a simple decision. Never in their recorded history had a chess champion hesitated over a mathematically optimal move. The silence in the spherical room stretched for several minutes as Veltar continued to calculate and recalculate the position, looking for the source of his inexplicable unease. His forearms moved in complex patterns as he tried different approaches to the analysis, but every method confirmed that capturing Lisa's king was the correct logical choice. Yet something about the resulting position continued to feel wrong, in ways that his computational mind could not explain or quantify. Finally, Veltar made his decision and moved his piece to attack Lisa's king. It was the mathematically correct choice that every calculation had indicated was optimal. The move appeared to put the human player in an impossible position with her king, under attack from multiple angles and no apparent escape route that would not lead to immediate defeat in the following moves. But Lisa had been planning for this exact sequence for months, and she had prepared a response that would demonstrate the fundamental difference between alien logic and human intuition. She moved her king to what appeared to be an even worse position, placing it in greater danger and seemingly hastening her own defeat. Every human watching the game felt despair as they saw what looked like the final confirmation of human intellectual inferiority. However, Tony Blake had been studying the three-dimensional chess position from his security station, and he suddenly understood what Lisa had accomplished. Her king move was not a desperate attempt to delay defeat, but rather the key piece in an elaborate trap that she had been constructing for the entire game. The position that looked hopeless was actually the trigger for a devastating counterattack that would reverse the entire game situation. Suddenly, the entire three-dimensional board structure shifted in ways that no one had anticipated. The pieces that Veltar had positioned for his final attack became liabilities that limited his options, instead of assets that guaranteed victory. The formations he had built to create overwhelming advantage turned into constraints that prevented him from responding to unexpected threats. In trying to achieve logical perfection, he had created a structure so rigid that it could not adapt to creative and unpredictable changes. Amy Foster reported that the communications between the Zephyrian ships had changed from confident victory announcements to confused questions about what was happening in the game. The alien observers were struggling to understand how their champion's mathematically superior position had suddenly become problematic, and why their computational advantage was not translating into the expected easy victory. Lisa floated calmly in the center of the room and prepared for the final phase of her plan. Everything she had studied about the differences between human and alien thinking was about to be put to the ultimate test. She had created the conditions where human creativity and intuition could triumph over computational logic, but now she had to execute the final moves that would either prove humanity's worth or confirm their intellectual limitations in the eyes of the galactic community. Tony Blake watched the final phase unfold with growing amazement as he began to understand the full scope of what Lisa had accomplished over the past 6 hours. Her last 30 moves had been a masterpiece of strategic misdirection, where each individual move appeared to be a desperate attempt to avoid defeat while actually constructing the most elaborate trap in the history of chess. The trap existed not just in the three spatial dimensions of the zero-gravity board, but also in the temporal dimension of move sequences and the psychological dimension of how different types of minds approached complex problems. Veltar's superior processing power, which had seemed like such an overwhelming advantage throughout the game, was now working against him in ways he could not understand. His logical mind was calculating endless variations of positions, but all of his analysis was based on assumptions that were no longer valid. He was trapped in computational loops that prevented him from seeing the larger patterns that human intuition could recognize instantly. Lisa made a next move with perfect confidence, and it looked like another blunder that would give Vel even more attacking opportunities. She moved one of her remaining pieces to a position where it could be captured, easily leaving multiple other pieces undefended, and apparently creating new weaknesses in her already desperate position. Every conventional chess analysis would indicate that she was hastening her own defeat through a series of fundamental errors. But Chris Holland had been tracking the mathematical patterns from his navigation station, and he announced to the crew that something impossible was happening. The moves that looked like mistakes were actually creating a geometric pattern in four-dimensional space that was converging toward a position where Veltar would have no legal moves available despite having a large material advantage and what appeared to be a winning position. Veltar reached out with his forearms to capitalize on what his calculations showed was certain victory. His logical mind had identified multiple ways to win the game immediately, and he was confident that the human's desperate moves had only made the final outcome more inevitable. But as he touched the chess piece he wanted to move, something stopped him again. The same inexplicable feeling that had made him hesitate before was now stronger and more urgent than ever. The alien's large, multifaceted eyes darted around the three-dimensional chess position as he tried to understand why his instincts were warning him about a danger that his logical analysis could not detect. Every calculation confirmed that he had won the game, but something deeper than mathematics was telling him that the position contained hidden threats that computational thinking could not recognize. Dr. Helen Cooper reported that Veltar's electromagnetic readings were showing patterns she had never seen before in any species. The alien was experiencing a complete breakdown of the logical thinking processes that had guided his entire existence. Meanwhile, Lisa's biometric readings showed she was in a state of perfect mental clarity and focused determination as she prepared to demonstrate the power of human creative thinking. Kethva floated closer to the game area, and his silver skin had dimmed to almost gray as he struggled to understand what was happening to his champion. The other Zephyrian observers had gone completely silent, and their harmonic communications had stopped entirely as they watched their greatest strategic mind experience something that should have been impossible for their species. Lisa made her final move, and it was the most shocking moment in the entire game. She moved a piece that appeared to leave her king completely undefended and vulnerable to immediate capture. The move looked like the ultimate mistake that would end any hope of human victory and confirm that the species was too primitive for galactic civilization, but as the piece settled into its new position, the true nature of her strategy became clear. Veltar stared at the position for several minutes as his computational mind processed what had just happened. He ran through every possible response and calculation, but the result was always the same. His king was trapped not by overwhelming force, but by the elegant geometry of pieces that had seemed poorly positioned, but were actually placed with perfect precision to create an inescapable web of constraints. The word came quietly from Lisa's lips, but it echoed through the spherical room with the force of a thunderclap. "Checkmate," she announced, and the silence that followed was profound and absolute. Veltar's forearms froze in position as his multifaceted eyes continued to process the board but found no escape from the trap that human intuition had constructed. Around his logical thinking, Kethva moved through the zero-gravity environment with mechanical precision as he approached the chess position to verify what his champion was claiming. His large eyes examined every piece and every possible move, but he could not deny the reality of what had occurred. Veltar's defeat was not due to computational error or lack of processing power, but to encountering a form of intelligence that the Zephyrians had never recognized as valid. The alien leader's harmonic voice carried new tones that had never been present before as he spoke to the humans. "Impossible," he whispered at first, and then louder with something that might have been respect or wonder. "Remarkable," he continued, as he began to understand that Veltar's defeat represented a fundamental challenge to everything the Zephyrians believed about intelligence and problem-solving. Captain Jake Morrison pushed himself off from the observation wall and floated toward the center, where Lisa remained calm despite her exhaustion from 7 hours of intense mental concentration. "What happens now?" he asked, as he looked at the alien delegation that had come to test humanity's worthiness for galactic civilization. Kethva's form shimmered as he communicated with the ships of his fleet, and the response came back within minutes. "The Galactic Council will be informed that humanity possesses a unique form of strategic intelligence," he announced in his musical voice. "Your species thinks in patterns we cannot predict and finds solutions we cannot calculate. This makes you valuable allies rather than primitive subjects." Lisa Warren floated in the center of the spherical room, surrounded by the chess pieces that had been the battlefield for humanity's future. She looked around at her crewmates and spoke the words that would be remembered throughout human history. "We did not win because we are smarter than them," she said quietly. "We won because we think differently, and sometimes different is exactly what the universe needs to solve its greatest challenges." As the alien ships prepared to depart carrying news of humanity's unexpected victory to civilizations across the galaxy, the crew of the ship realized they had just changed the destiny of their entire species. Not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the uniquely human ability to find order in chaos and strength in apparent weakness. Game was over, but humanity's real adventure in the galaxy was just beginning.